The Holy Gospel according to St. Luke. St. John. In the beginning was a Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him is life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not understand it. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the power to become children of God, who are born not of blood or of the will of the flesh or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. The Gospel of the Lord. Let's listen to the first words of our Gospel again, if you would. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning, and the Word came through him. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being that was being. What has come into the world in him was light, and the life was the light of the world people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. We're here for many reasons tonight. To celebrate the birth of Jesus, surely, but also to meet some of our deepest and often most unacknowledged needs, and our wants sometimes that we have not gotten. It's here in this building that we bring our hopes and fears. It's here and in this building that we also bring our joys and our sorrows. Hopes for safe travels, for joyous celebration, even for right presence, and fears that things may be delayed or not go as plans. It's here that we raise our joys and face our sorrows, and there have been plenty of joys and sorrows here at Holy Trinity this past year. This Christmas may feel different than a lot of other ones, and for some people this Christmas will feel flatter and less colorful last year because of all the sorrows we've had as a congregation. Each Christmas is different. I can't say how this Christmas is for you, but just to acknowledge that each of us sitting here may have a different understanding of what this means for us tonight. We're not the only ones to have faced economic turbulence or emotional turbulence at this Christmas season. For more than 75 years, the twin plants of Groverdale and North Groverdale, Connecticut, made thread and cloth for premium shirts, mainly the Arrow shirt brand. They were so big and so massive that these plants, that they kept on hiring people, and they hired a lot of people from Sweden because they were known as diligent workers. By 1895, the Swedish congregation was so large that it was the largest congregation, Lutheran congregation here in New England, with over 700 members. It was a burgeoning church, mainly with factory workers, to be sure, but also some merchants and also a number of farmers. Well, because of Sweden's long winters, Christmas has always been a special time for Swedes. Many Swedish churches, even today, celebrate what they call juletta, which is a pre-dawn candlelit service. And it starts in the darkness, and people light candles, they come into church, and just about the time that communion starts, the sun comes up on the horizon, and they celebrate the birth of Christ as they sit at Christ's table. Well, for the Swedish immigrants there in North Groverdale, that Julita service had even more significance, not just because it was something that they had at home, but because they worked for a not so enlightened company that monitored their wages pretty carefully and docked them for anything that they didn't do properly. They didn't have a lot of spare money around. So Julita was one of those celebrations where everybody could celebrate. They'd have this wonderful service. Then afterwards, they'd have a wonderful feast with Swedish coffee breads, with cardamom coffee breads, with delights like Swedish meatballs and herring and all that great stuff. And of course, with the Swedes, great hot cups of dark, rich coffee. It was a time that everybody looked forward to. Now, the problem was, as Julita being done right there before the sun came up, also conflicted with milking time for the cows. And if you've ever been on a farm, you can't not milk a cow when it's supposed to be milked. You would cause a lot of distress with the cows. And so the farmers had to milk their cows before they came to Julita. Now, most times it was okay because the ground was so hard and there was snow on the ground that there was no barn smell when they got to church. But occasionally, if they had rain and mud, the smell of the barn came into church. On this one Christmas day, it was really bad. It was a lot of rain, a lot of stench. And as the farmers came in, you could see the eyes of the other parishioners looking around and rolling their R's. And you heard things like people whispering, outrage, or that stinks, or Christmas is ruined. And the pastor heard all of this. And you could tell that there was a tempest brewing in the church. So as the organist finished the prelude, the pastor got up front, welcomed people to church, and smiled and took a deep breath theatrically and said, the smell of the barn, the smell of Christmas. This was the first smell that our Lord Jesus smelled in the manger on that first Christmas day. The smell of the barn is the smell of Christmas. Well, all of a sudden, the anger and the hurt dissipated as people got the idea that Christmas doesn't have to be pristine and lovely and wonderful, that Christmas can sometimes be messy and smelly. And that's okay, because Jesus was born in a barn. There was a person, a pastor named Phillips Brooks. And Phillips Brooks had been from a family, a very well-off family, very well loved by his parents. You know, they doted on him, they doted on his brothers. And he was a very good student. I mean, he went to Boston Latin, school, high school, and then went off to Harvard College. And he was so bright that he was able to graduate Harvard in like 2 years. He graduated when he was 20 years old. And he'd always wanted to teach because he always loved books and he always liked reading. And he thought, boy, I can teach other people to love reading like I can. Well, he was a real failure. I mean, he was there only for about 4 months. And he was so bad at teaching at Boston Latin, his alma mater, that they fired him. And he had to go home and tell his parents at Christmas that he had been fired. He said afterwards, I did not know what I became and did not care very much about what happened to me. But I only wish I was 15 years old again and that I might become something different and become something more special than what I am now. Well, he sulked around for a while, but then he decided to take some courses at the Virginia Theological School in Richmond, Virginia, far away from Boston, where everybody knew him and everybody knew his failures. And there he faces a very challenge because he loved the Scriptures and he loved to understand what the Scriptures meant. But his other people at the seminary were just really there. Let's get a practical degree and let's get out and preach the gospel, which was not what he wanted to do. So when he was finished and he was ordained, he wasn't sure that even the church was the right thing for him. Well, he took a church in Philadelphia in 1860. If you know our country's history, the Civil War broke out there. And during the 1860s, not only was he taking care of his congregation, but also taking care of the people who were wounded and brought to Philadelphia to be operated on, and also was there to bury many of the people who did not survive. He found out that that was his ministry, dealing with people in grief and pain. Right after the Civil War, he was able to go to the Holy Land, something he'd always wanted to do, and was able to see Bethlehem for the first time, not as what he imagined it, but as it truly was. And so he wrote this familiar and beloved hymn, O Little Town of Bethlehem. Let me read the first verse again for you. O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie. Above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by. Yet in thy dark streets shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. This everlasting light that Phillips Brooks is talking about, of course, is the light of the Word made flesh, Jesus himself living among us. That everlasting life does not become flesh, however, as a king, nor as a Roman warrior god like Mars, or like the god Baal of the Canaanites, who was all powerful, or even like Ra, the sun god, the god of the Egyptians, who, if he ever hid himself behind a cliff, would make his followers go mad, worrying whether he would ever come back. No, the God that we worship came to us. This light came to us. This Word made flesh came to us as a baby, to an insignificant maiden, married to an obscure carpenter, whose birth was announced by angels, God's messengers, not to kings and princes and the elite of Judah, but rather those on the margins who were shepherds and who were tending their sheep because that's the only job they could do. Here is Jesus, born in a manger, a place where cows eat, yet who will give himself to us in a very few minutes in the bread and wine of communion, the meal for us, for our salvation. More than Santa Claus, who knows you when you're sleeping and knows when you're awake. This infant manger knows you so well because he is God himself, that he knows you from the very beginning. As St. Augustine would say, God is closer to us, Jesus is closer to us than we are to ourselves. This is the one that Phillips Brooks was talking about when he talked about the one that was the eternal light and who knows the hopes and fears of all the years, for they meet him tonight. The hopes and fears of all the years. I want to just dwell on that for one more minute or two. These are the words I want to leave you with. For all of us come here bearing something, and all of us come here looking for something. We perhaps come with hope and look for joy. Or we might come in fear that something bad is going to happen, and sorrow is not far behind. But in the midst of these mixed emotions, Christ comes. His birth as one of us, who grows up like us, learns like we did, and who will suffer for us, assures us that God never leaves us on our own. For this reason, the theologian Karl Rahner has said, at Christmas, through his grace-filled love for us, he is with us always. Jesus says to the world, I am there. I will be with you. I am your life. This is the one who can say to us, as he says in John's Gospel, do not let your hearts be troubled, believe in me. He says this to people who are troubled, whose fears and sorrows dull the joy of the season. He promises to be with them and listen and not judge, to comfort and not rebuke. You don't have to whistle a happy tune. You're okay. The fears of all the years are met in Jesus. Your fears and sorrows are taken by Jesus. So if things at this Christmas are looking less than happy, it's okay. God's still with you, not far distant from you, even if you are grieving for someone. And for those of us who are hoping for joy this night, Rahner hears the voice of Jesus saying, do not afraid to be happy, for joy is the standard of living that is really suitable now that I have destroyed anxiety and death and given hope to those who think they have no hope. The reality of this incomparable wonder is my mighty love. I have sheltered safely in the cold stable of your world. I am there for you. I no longer will go away from this world. Even though you do not see me, I am there. It is Christmas. Light the candles to dispel the darkness. They have more right to exist than the darkness does, for the light that Jesus brings has stifled the darkness, confused it, and it can no longer overpower that which is light. This is the light which shines in the darkness, and in Jesus shines in us as well. May your Christmases be merry and bright. Amen.